Welcome back to the Sleepless podcast, where I interview people that are much more qualified than me in just about every area, and we've got a return today with an absolute massive guest. 18 games, 6 goals, including one very famous one that we're going to get to definitely, for the Saints in the AFLW. We signed to the Saints for their inaugural AFL season in 2019. You signed in, young gun in the AFLW, midfielder and a winger, all-round legend as well, Molly McDonald.
Thanks for having me.
It's very good to have you on. I should have had you on a lot earlier, to be honest.
Yeah.
I don't know why I haven't had you on yet. It's taken far too long.
It has.
So it's about time I pulled my finger out and got something done. It's been a couple of years since we've seen each other anyway, from I think it was Byron.
Yeah.
Year that was. Last time I saw you were getting up at 6 every morning and running around Byron, and I was laying in bed. Absolutely nothing. Come a long way since then, obviously. You've ended up signing up for the Saints, which is pretty cool.
Yeah, have come a long way, but yeah.
It's been worth it.
It has been.
Yes, absolutely. I just even back then, when we'd go up, for the backstory anyway for the listeners, Molly and my cousin Emily, who she's listening, who should probably listen because you're on it here. So shout out to all the Harpers up in Queensland. We're best friends through high school and primary school and stuff. So we went up to Queensland and saw them, and yeah, you were a footy gun and ended up getting drafted, and here I am the same age and I'm doing this.
So good.
Yes. To begin with, we're just can you run through with the listeners kind of where you grew up and how it is that you came to fall in love with footy as a sport?
Yeah. So obviously come from a family that just love sport, but especially footy. My brother was a little young gun, went through Auskick and all that. But Mum would never let me play footy at all, even Auskick. But so I started with playing basketball, got pretty heavily involved with that, playing rep for about 4 or 5 years, and then sort of said to Mum when the girls' competition came around, I think it was a couple of years in, and I was sort of starting to get sick of basketball and the whole political side of it. So I was like, oh, Mum, not really enjoying basketball. Will you let me play footy if I quit? So we had some conversations around that, and finally convinced her for me to play footy. So I started off with Seaford about 5 years ago, I think now. And then just progressively got through V-Line and Interleague, and then found my way to Stingrays, which is probably the base of how I really got drafted. And then was also played a couple of years with Vic Country, and then in my final year of under-18s I was in the National Academies, so that was all good fun. And then got signed at Saints as a 17-year-old, so pretty exciting. That's pretty,
you said you started with Seaford 5 years ago. That's pretty crazy that in 5 years you went from starting footy to now playing the AFLW every week.
Yeah, I guess I was pretty lucky of when I came into footy. It was sort of perfect timing for me to get into the AFL through that system. So, been pretty lucky.
It's very cool, and something that, I've had Steph Jochi on, who has a completely different kind of backstory, where she's grown up and had to go through Diamond Creek and Darabin and all the old VFL or VWFL back then. It's so weird to see the contrasting and how now it's changed so much for now the younger players that are coming through, you and all the ones that are getting drafted now, they get to play, they just kind of grow up and get into the system straight away of Stingrays.
It's very similar to how the boys sort of get drafted as well, which is it's been pretty good with the progress with the women's AFLW, so it's very exciting where we're heading.
Yes, and obviously you said you still liked footy when you were younger, just you never had to go, your mum always said you couldn't play it.
Yeah.
Which sort of players back then did you resonate with mostly? What players or teams or anything you really kind of loved back then?
I think I just liked watching it. When I was younger, before I sort of understood the whole rules, I'd pretty much just bag for which team won that week. So probably bagged for everybody in the AFL. But then I grew up, I was idolised my brother, playing footy and stuff. we'd always kick in the backyard and whatnot. But he barracked for Richmond, so I became a Richmond supporter when I was younger.
Okay.
And yeah, just loved watching them, even though they weren't very successful back then. But yeah.
Yeah, that's very fair enough. And like, I guess because it was obviously just the men's league back then, there wasn't any like of women's idols that were like well known nationally kind of thing. So it's fair enough to kind of just pick a team or the love of the game.
100%.
You said eventually you were picked up by the Dendy Stingrays, which is obviously the rep league team for anyone that doesn't know. How did they get in contact with you? Like, and what was it like to kind of go from the Seaford level to like the semi-pro kind of scouts watching and stuff like that?
Yeah, great question. I don't really fully remember. I think they sort of got into contact with obviously my local club, Seaford. And then sort of you go out and try and they make cuts and stuff. So I think I was like a bottom age when I started there. And yeah, sort of just came through the ranks, was playing with some pretty good players that are playing AFLW now, like Geordie Allen, girls like that have been pretty successful. So yeah, it was really enjoyable and lucky that I got that opportunity to go in when I was selected.
Of course. And how was the step up from the local level to then the Stingrays? Like, how was the sort of difference in skill between those two?
Yeah, it's a pretty big step up. I guess fitness wise, I had that pretty covered. Always enjoyed running.
Yes.
But yeah, I guess the speed of the game was probably the thing that jumped the most. I think like my skills wise and running wise, like that was all down pat. It was just sort of getting into the speed of the game and progressing from there.
That's something that I think a lot of players coming through like talk about. It's like they have the skill kind of for it and they've got the fitness for it, but it's the speed that everyone talks about. How like it just jumps each level up you go.
Yeah, 100%.
Which it's so weird to think about, and like, but obviously you got it down pat in the end anyway.
Yeah.
After the Stingrays, you then signed with the Southern Saints,
who
is now VFLW, was VWFL team, in the hopes of being picked up by an AFLW club. What was the feeling when St. Kilda called you and to offer you that signature as like the pre-signing for that?
So after Stingrays, I played a bit of VFL, but I think it was before I started in my last under 18 years. I went to a couple of trainings with the Southern Saints. We got into contact with, or the Saints got into contact with us. There was about 8 of us girls from the Stingrays and Sandy in that sort of region that they did draft from. And then they were like, sort of explained with their pre-signing coming in as an AFLW side that they got that opportunity to sign a couple of players. So I guess there was a bit of pressure, trying to perform and train well. And then Mum one day was like, oh, we've got a meeting with Pete, the head coach at the time. I was like, oh yeah, okay. Didn't really think about it much. I was like, oh, like maybe I'm getting signed or maybe they're telling me I didn't make it. But yeah, then had a meeting at the Saints and they told me I got signed. Probably the hardest part was I wasn't able to tell anyone for like 2 months. So I got signed in like early December and it didn't get released by the media until like early Feb. So was only really allowed to tell like mum, dad, my brother. And it was kind of just in the family and everybody was like, oh, I've been signed yet. I was like, oh no, like still trying. So yeah, when it came out, it was a bit of a relief too. So I try to keep my mouth shut as much as I could.
That's very funny.
Yeah.
Like having to hide it from everybody. Like I couldn't do it.
I know.
I couldn't like physically like every time someone would ask me, I'd just get that smile. I couldn't. Like,
100%. And like you're so excited and I'm like, oh, I can't tell anyone.
No one's let us know. No one can tell me anything. Oh, that's tough. I couldn't imagine that. Coming into that first season, obviously it was your first season, but it was the Saints' first season as well, which was a big sort of thing for everyone. It was the start of that expansion of the AFLW. How did you and the entire club feel? Because it was a first game for so many of you, obviously. It was a debut. Like, how was the kind of atmosphere in the club like through pre-season where you've got your first games coming up and it's a bit of a panic and a bit of a what's going on kind of thing?
Yeah, it was we had a team that was pretty filled with most of our VFL players from the Southern Saints. So I think it was good in the sense that we all had played with each other and we all knew what each other liked and sort of stuff like that. That's where we did create like that positive culture between each other. But I guess it was like sort of like we didn't really know what to expect because a lot of us hadn't played AFLW. So I think we were just, super stoked to get out there and just wanted to play, I guess. And then we did just learn and grow each year, which we still are as a club. But it's going in a really positive way.
Yeah, and like you said, a lot of the VFLW players came through with you to the St Kilda in the AFLW. Was the style of play that you were doing kind of different between the two, or was it very similar, like the way you wanted to play and the way that the team wanted to react with each other and everything?
Yeah, we did have a pretty similar game plan, I would say, to the VFL, just because most of us from the VFL made it into the AFLW side, so keeping it basic and not too complicated. Obviously, there was a few little things that we tweaked, but yeah, I think it was just good to create those relationships and keep that game plan pretty similar, so it wasn't too complex, but yeah.
Yeah, and then the first game obviously came up, where it was at Moorabbin as well, and the atmosphere. How was that experience? Like the atmosphere of having, I think it was a lockout at Moorabbin, and there was just thousands of people there cheering for the Saints. Like, how was that atmosphere? Yeah,
it was definitely very surreal. Like, we just walked out for our warm-up, and I was like, wow. Like, can't imagine what the boys feel like running out. Like, just the atmosphere and the community around Moorabbin is insane, and it was a very surreal feeling that I sort of haven't revisited, but yeah, it was super exciting to get out with so many of our supporters there as well.
Yeah, and we're going to run the clip because we know what we're talking about. Hold on, here we go.
Kios again, already stepping up as a leader in this young team, and she delivers to McDonald, who wants to play on the left, goes for goal, kicks the opening goal in St.Kilda AFLW history.
So there's that.
Yeah.
That was what I was talking about with our famous goal. What was going through the mind when you took the mark and you played on?
Yeah.
What's going through the brain when a situation like that kind of comes up?
I don't think much was going through, to be honest. I hate set shots. I was like, I'm just going to play on. I'm not the one for set shots. I still can't really describe what was going through my head. Even once I kicked the goal, I kind of just didn't celebrate.
I'm going to say, the celebration is just you kind of breathing. You just kind of sigh of relief.
Did this just happen? Because there was talk around the club because there was a McDonald that kicked the first, the first men's goal. So, it'd been mentioned a couple of times, like, oh, what if it actually happens? And we were just sort of joking around about it in the team, we're just going to handball to Molly, to try and kick the first goal. And then, it all happened. And it's still, I'm very honoured to be able to have that in the books. But it was very exciting too.
I find it very funny that, the reason it's the run and play on is just because you didn't want to do the set shot. Imagine the history. It goes down in Saints history now, and it gets talked about so much. And it's such a historic goal because you just wanted to play on the mark. That's very funny. And like I was saying, that first men's goal was a McDonald. I didn't know you guys were talking about that before. I thought it was just kind of a thing that got found out later.
I remember at our season launch, I think they mentioned it. And then from there it was kind of a little ongoing joke, and then kind of made it happen.
That's very good. And I remember because I was at the game,
yeah,
and we'd all come, me and all my family, come to watch you and everything, and we were sitting there, and someone had said something how funny would it be if Molly kicked the goal or something like how funny would it be if Molly got best on or kicked the first goal or whatever, and we were oh, that would be pretty funny. And then I don't know, a minute later, 2 minutes later, just Mark turned around. It was so weird.
I reckon my family celebrated a lot better than I did. Well, my brothers and his mates were up in the lawn and they'd had a few beers, and then they said they all sculled their drink when I kicked the goal, and I was like, yep, it's a pretty good celebration.
Good. That's what you're after. You should have run to the fence and just taken one and just go on yourself. Surely you still hold that over the rest of your team. That's still a thing that, if anyone ever mentions anything, just, I kicked the first goal.
Yeah, I guess in the first year we kind of like were still joking about it, but it hasn't really been mentioned since. But yeah, I do have a little nickname not from that, but from my new midfield coach.
Yes.
I get called Snag, so maybe that's why.
Well, you lived up to it the last game as well, and they kicked the goal in the last game, which we will get to as well. But going back to now last year, so 2020, you're restricted to just the 5 games. You had the quad injury and then COVID, and it was a whole just pain last year. Was 100%. It tough to kind of sit on the sidelines and have to just watch? Well, when you couldn't play because of because of your injury, was it tough to watch? And then when you had to obviously the last season call off real late, but was it really hard to just watch everything else happen and realise like you can't kind of get out there and play?
Yeah, definitely, especially coming from the first season, which didn't get finished with finals. But I played every game, so I was like, and I wasn't really ever the one to have any injuries. And then sort of had this little niggle with my quad, which I've torn 3 times. So that was, it was intense. And it was quite frustrating because it sort of like was ongoing. And I guess like it was frustrating like watching from the sides, knowing like I could be out there playing. But I guess you grow as a person and understand like what you need to go through to get back into the team. And it was great to watch the team succeed on the sidelines as well though, and just watch like our game from afar, which was just a different perspective, but I've grown as a person and as a player because of it.
Yeah, and like you said, you're back into the team again this year, and it's you've been playing every game basically, and you're back into that full starting lineup, which is awesome to see as well. You missed the game this year because of
COVID,
health and safety, which is just something that's going to happen to everybody. It seems like at this point. And coming into this year, there was a coaching change, obviously, with Peter going out and Nick coming back in. Was it tough to see Peter go and see after she sort of nurtured you for the first couple of years? Yeah,
it was a little bit tough to sort of see her go because she was my coach at VFL too. So we did create that good relationship between each other, and we definitely learned, I definitely learned a lot off her. But having Nick come in, I think it's just created such a positive culture around the club, and we've had a few coach changes, and even though we probably haven't had the success that we wanted, from the inside, it's just such a positive culture, and we know that, we're just starting out and growing as a team, so excited to see the next few years and see how we go.
Yeah, and like you said, there's been a bit of pressure on Nick so far at the start of the year after a bit of the struggles to start the year, and then you've kind of brought it back in that last round. But to hear from the inside that obviously that culture is still there and it's positive and everything, that's what you want to hear. And from a club, obviously there's all this pressure on the outside, but it's good that you've still got that faith in him and what he can do as well.
Yeah, I think the club itself and everybody around us has been very supportive of Nick and of us girls. The boys are heavily involved as much as they can be with us, which has been really good and which I love about the Saints. But yeah, I don't think, he cops a bit, Nick, because of our season so far, but I'm excited to see what he can do and we can do as a team moving forward.
Yeah, and it's obviously, Nick Dalsano, he's had that experience of playing all that footy growing up, so he obviously knows what he's doing and the way he's going to go about it. And obviously I think it's just that transition period in between Peter and Nick where it's going to be a bit different for you guys, obviously, and that's just how it's going to be. And I think 100%. That's what media don't kind of get so far, but you can see how it's improving, especially the last 2 weeks, of how much you are, how close you are to sort of really getting to hit your stride and do all that, which we will touch on, because you had your first win on the season on the weekend, which was very exciting to see after absolute heartbreak the week before.
Yeah.
The first ever game lost after the siren in AFLW.
Yeah.
That hurt.
It did hurt.
That was a tough watch. I can't imagine being out there.
Yeah. I mean, we're all pretty disappointed after the game, but it's sort of, it was in our control, but out of our control at the same time. But I don't think, the way that Nick held himself, and he, we were all gutted, but he said that he was also proud of us girls that went out there and played, and he can see what we're going to grow into, and we just moved on forward to the next game against Gold Coast and got the win.
There we go. And that was very good to watch as well. It got a bit stressful towards the end again.
I did.
Where I was just like, please let it happen. And it finally happened. So that was always good. And for the game before as well, the 50 metre, we saw at the end of the game, we saw Kate Sheila, who was pretty upset about it, which hurt so much to see. But it was like seeing everyone get around and not just break up, but everyone kind of came together more, and Nick came with you guys, and everyone kind of was together. It was awesome to see anyway.
Yeah.
But tough.
Very
tough couple of weeks. But you got the win.
We got the win.
Good. Keep the goal on that one too. So snags continuing. The rest of this year is going to obviously prove to be massive for you guys. It's going to kind of be maybe not like a finals contender, but you want to kind of push yourselves for the rest of the year. What's the message from Nick and from Ree and from the rest of the leaders about what the rest of the year to like run it out and see how you can finish the year?
Yeah, I think what we focused upon every week is just that continual growth. Like we can see it from the inside and maybe like everybody else can't, but every game we've improved and we're just looking to set that benchmark and just continue from that. So I think on the weekend we've just set the Gold Coast game as a benchmark, and we don't want to really drop below that. So we just look, to keep growing and keep improving week on week.
Yes. Is there anyone at the Saints that's really impressed you this year that's either just come in or has kind of improved dramatically from last year and out of sight?
Yeah, there actually has been a few players. A lot of our younger girls have really pushed themselves in the pre-season. We've had Tani and Tilly come from the back into the midfield, which has been really positive, and just watching their game grow and them grow as a player as well. It's just incredible to see, and all the hard work they've put in over the pre-season, and then it's working out for them, which is really nice to see.
Yeah, I was going to say, like, especially Tilly, who I've noticed recently, has been, like, really good the last couple of weeks, and it's good to see, like, obviously without Georgia this year, there's been that room through the midfield, and it's good to see a lot of you guys stepping up to then kind of take that role, and, like, obviously it hasn't been an easy year, but you've improved, and the midfield's improved, and everything's improved, which is good to see. Yeah,
it's really good. Obviously not having Georgia or T in our midfield has probably been a big loss for us, but I think we haven't really dwelled on it too much. We've just looked to improve and add extras to our game, so it's been really good to see Tilly and Tani in. And I think Bianca Jacobson as well has been having an outstanding year. She's been really dominant down back and really helpful for us.
Yeah. And that's just and it can be like advancements and improvements, and it's just always going to get better and better, which is very good. What's next for you, do you think? Anything like outside of footy you're looking at, or just continuing with the footy, and what else kind of is next for you?
Yeah, I'm just looking to stay playing footy, obviously. Still pretty young. I'm studying as well, so I'm doing a double degree in education and exercise sports science, so that's a lot of fun. And then I'm working, so it's a lot going on. It's a lot to juggle, but wouldn't have it any other way. Get bored just sitting at home, so go out and triathlon as much as I can do.
It's a lot of study.
Much just pressure, but it's really good.
There's a lot, obviously, like a lot at the moment, especially about making like AFLW wages full time and with full time pay, because of like people like you and pretty much every AFLW player has to have that side job. I'm sure you're an advocate for a situation where it's full time AFLW kind of thing, I'm sure.
Yeah. Look, it's sort of a hard one to sort of not speak about, but sort of manage. We're definitely not where the boys are, so we all understand that in a sense. But it's definitely good with the years to come. Like, we all are getting a say in how we want and that process to becoming full time. So I think that's been really good growth and just trying to figure out where the AFLW is going. But it's looking pretty positive. So hopefully we'll get there in a few years' time, which would be nice.
It's what it's looking like. It's trending towards that way, I think. Yeah. And there's a new CBA, I think, soon where the players will get a go at talking about it and voicing their opinion. So I think if not, in the next couple of years and the few years after that, once the league, because I think it's full league next year, isn't it? Yeah.
Yep.
So I think pretty much when it comes that, and then it just keeps adding on. I think it's going to be not long before it's then full time.
Yeah.
It'll be something that'll be very exciting. Anyway.
Very exciting.
Yes, and you're still young, so you should be around for that.
I hope so.
Yeah, I hope so. It was awesome to chat again. Thank you very much for the time. I can't wait to see the rest of this year with the Saints and with you and see how everything goes. It's been awesome to have you on. I should have had you on earlier, like I said. But it's been great. And thank you very much for coming.
Awesome. Thanks for having me, and go Saints!